Can I set my snake right here? My snake right over here. I'm gonna hold my snake. Hold my snake right up the bathroom.
Oh shit.
I'm gonna hold my snake.
No!
Hold my snake for me.
Oh!
I'm gonna hold my snake for me.
Oh!
I'm gonna hold my snake when I go to the bathroom.
Hey, no.
Hold my snake. Hold my snake when I go to the bathroom. Hold my snake when I go to the bathroom.
What's up?
I'm gonna hold my snake. I'm gonna hold my snake for me. Hold my snake. Hold my snake here when I go to the bathroom. For me. For me. Y'all hold my snake for me.
Get the fuck away from me.
I'm gonna hold my snake.
Why'd you do it?
Get the bathroom. Hold my, you wanna hold him? My snake. Hey. One more.
Oh, man, get him.
My snake.
Woo!
Bite me, I'm gonna fuck you up.
Oh!
The bathroom. Hey. You wanna hold my snake for me?
Oh!
My snake while I go on.
No.
Okay.
Makes me think of this song. Ain't no way. Ain't no way.
No way.
I'm good. I'm good. No way.
Yeah, it's an absolute no for me. I remember you telling me that earlier today. I haven't seen it on any social media, maybe because of who I'm following. But you know, when you told me, I was like, first of all, why are we doing this? And how is it funny? But I have to be honest. Once I saw the video, it just a little bit. It was hilarious. But I can tell you right now, if someone came to me with the snake, I'm gone. Come on now.
Yeah, pretty much.
You couldn't convince me to hold the snake at all.
I have a neighbor who came over probably about 3 weeks ago to introduce us to his new snake. And so he rings the doorbell and look out and I say, hey, how you doing? And he's got this thing wrapped around his neck. And I was like, what's that? And then the snake started to hiss. I was like, listen. He was like, he's just such a sweetie. This is our new snake. And I was like, thank you for showing me. I'm good.
Yeah, I am not sure. I wanted to find the video where I saw it where a guy was in the hospital, or he's going into the hospital, and the guy walks up and says, hold my snake. And he like freaks out. He throws his hand, but when he does it, he knocks the snake out of the guy's hand, and like the snake flies. And so I was just thinking about, one, the harm to the snake. Two, not that that's going to, there are people who watch our show, who are probably animal lovers, snake lovers. So I want to empathize with them. That's not where my heart goes first. But, I think about like the people in the store, some people are terrified of snakes. And, by them presenting a snake to them and say, hey, hold my snake, how do you know people won't react in ways where it's going to overwhelm their system? You could cause serious, conditions for people, panic attacks, anxiety attacks, worse, heart attacks and strokes. I mean, all sorts of things. So I thought this is not a challenge that we probably should. I mean, it'll get you to smile or laugh a couple of times, but horrible. I have not had it happen.
Right.
I do not want it to happen.
That part.
Yeah. All right. So we're going to keep it moving then. And remember, hopefully that little technical glitch that I noticed in the system won't keep you all from seeing what we share. I'm going to share it again as we move into our job corner. I saw it on the sites, but we're just trying to get LinkedIn challenge, another 46 folks who will follow us on LinkedIn. We put some things in the chat. Actually, Jaquin, because this is a new chat. No, it's not. It's still there. Will you drop it again just in case?
Absolutely.
And then we will transition. All right. So here's where we are. We have, and we talk about this quite often, lots of people who are out of work, losing jobs left and right. We've got a more recent decision to and authorization now from the courts to pretty much dismantle the Department of Ed. So that's another set of thousands of people who are out of work or will be out of work. Certainly, those who have been working in the space of diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging have been challenged in this space. And so, Dr. Kizart, we devote, as you know, probably from watching other episodes, a space in the show to talk about tips, offering some encouragement and advice to those who are either underemployed, unemployed, looking for new work, looking for a major pivot. And so, we'll just kick around a couple of thoughts. I guess one would be it's kind of cool. You actually do work right now. We'll come to this in your fuller bio, but as the institutional diversity, equity, and inclusion kind of officer at Tidewater Community College.
Not anymore.
Not anymore.
No. I sent the updated bio, but no, not anymore. I serve as the, things shifted,
Yeah.
and my current role at the college is the director of student success initiatives. However, I always like to make it clear that when I'm doing work on podcasts or any speaking engagements, that I am not speaking on behalf of the college. I am speaking on behalf of Lightwork Equitable Consultants, which is my consulting firm, and on behalf of being an author of a book.
Yeah. So, as a person who has worked in DEI and student success and DEI, not a political statement, they are related, right? I mean, you can't work to support students for their success without appreciating who they are.
Absolutely.
What advice do you have for folks who might be out there working in DEI spaces, feeling the sort of force and the tense, the shift with policies and practices? I mean, if you're working in that kind of space right now and you're worried about tomorrow, or worried about what will happen, any advice for them?
So the first thing that comes to mind, well, there's a couple of things that come to mind. I think that number one, at the NADOHE conference, one of the things that was really instrumental was the refocusing on education and the refocusing on vocabulary, and the fact that unfortunately there's people in the diversity, equity, and inclusion space that that are not leading with integrity, right? And so I think this is an opportunity to re-examine how we are approaching the work. To me, all good work starts from the inside out, right? And so one of my I call him one of my unofficial mentors, Dr. Jamal Watson. He and I had a really good conversation about diversifying diversity, right? And it started at the NADOHE conference after I noticed that there was a panel on religion, and the panel, I didn't think that it was very inclusive, right? Particularly of African-based spiritual traditions. And often people who are in African-based spiritual traditions, like, wear white, cover their heads, and things of that nature. And I was like, I would love to see us diversify diversity. And so that led, he and I had a conversation about other religions specifically, and other traditions and cultures, and how even in the space of, and I'm getting somewhere with this, of honoring of the diversity, equity, inclusion work, how there's still so much learning that has to be done, right? And so I would say first continue to learn so that the work comes from the inside out, right? Being curious about people, being curious about cultures, being curious about languages, being curious about religions and all these various aspects of diversity, and beginning from the inside out. Second, I went to a business a master business class with John Hope Bryant, who is amazing. At the Black Brand had a Black Diamond weekend, probably back in November, early, maybe late October, early November. And one of the things that he says, and he has, a podcast, and he's on Instagram and is doing a lot of shorts and videos and things of that nature. One of the things that he said in the master class really struck me. He said, this is the time to develop businesses, right? That there are a lot of systems that are in place that are designed to support businesses, right? Even if we look at some of the changes that are happening from a federal level, a lot of things are to support businesses. And so he said for people of African descent, and he said in all minorities, this is the time to develop businesses. So uh, 13, one of the things that I tell my children, and I have a 14 and a 16-year-old, and my 16-year-old is about to get her first job. And my son and I were having a conversation, and I said, always have your own business. Don't ever, ever, ever leave feeding yourself, clothing yourself, right, on anybody else. Like it's good to have that salary position, to have that stable job and things of that nature, but it's also essential to cultivate your own gifts, your own talents. I don't care if it's you love to sing. Make sure you're a backup singer or a frontline singer somewhere where you're earning some additional income. And so those are the three things that come to mind. I hope that was helpful.
Absolutely. Love it. So I hear a couple things. One about vocabulary, which all of us are having to become pretty creative in how we talk through and talk about these things, these issues, and the things we're working on. I think two is, often people will think more about the problem, the things that they can't control. A lot of what you just covered are things that are within our control. They're more internal, they're more proximal to us. And certainly that's good advice to people that, when things are when things are changing, we often forget that everything is not changing. And so then what are those things that are staying the same? Who
Right.
are the people that are still around? What's
Right.
the work we still get to do? I think those are things that I hold up to as well. Kind of map on what you said, Jaquin.
Yeah, I appreciate what you talked about and what you offered us, because Terrell and I talked about this probably 2 weeks ago about, you know, really focusing on the language that we use in our writing and in social
Mm.
media posts and so forth. Like, when he mentioned it to me, I think I was using equity something. And basically he was like, I think we could be more strategic about the words that we use and intentional. And at first, I would say that my guard was up. I was like, "Oh no, we gonna use diversity, equity, and inclusion. Okay, we're not gonna turn our back." But after sitting with it and hearing what he was saying, I realized that, you know, being more intentional with the words and expanding our vocabulary, we're actually being more direct with the work that we're doing, and I can get on board with that.
Mhm.
So for me, my job tip, I'm gonna pivot a little bit. We normally talk about what to wear, um the camera angle, the lighting, all these things that are important, especially when you're on a Zoom call during an interview. Now, there is something that we have not spoken about, and I didn't think we had to, but recently I had an experience with someone else, and I think it's important to address it, and that is alcohol. Although you may be, I know I had the same facial expression. Although you may be of age, it is wise to sit the bottle aside until the interview is over. Do not drink alcohol. I know some of you probably looking through the screen or watching like this guy's joking. So it's not a joke. It's so true. It happened. And I know it cost them the job. I mean, could be the best candidate. You may be over 21, but either do it before or do it after. But don't drink during the interview.
Wow, that's a tip. It's definitely a tip I didn't know or think that we needed to tip. Yeah.
And you heard it here first at Do Good Work Podcast. So make sure, if you're going to do it before the interview, I guess do it before, maybe after, not during. All right. So if you have job tips or things you want to share, feel free, drop it in the chat across various platforms. We will certainly bring it on the screen and share it. Well, listen, friends, tonight we are honored to welcome someone whose work sits at the intersection of truth telling, transformation, and truly good work. Dr. Claudine Kizart is a nationally recognized leader and the proprietor of Lightwork Equitable Solutions, serving in a number of capacities that she can talk about across K-12 and higher ed in her career. She is the author of Beyond Implicit and Explicit Bias, a journey to anti-bias work through the lens of strategies and stories. This is more than a book, it's a call to action. It challenges us to look inward and outward to not only recognize the presence of bias, but to use her words to name it, to disrupt it, and to build back better. So, Dr. Kizart, Claudine, welcome to Do Good Work Podcast. We are super duper uber glad to have you here. Jaquin, you get to kick us off.
Yes,
Thank you for
sir.
having me.
Absolutely. So again, after that wonderful bio, we strongly believe that you are doing, solid work, what we call is good work that truly makes an impact. So can you tell us more about the good work you're doing now?
So I'm a very literal person. So I'll go with like right now. This week I finalized my business plan. Yay! And finally got my received my business license. And for me, that is a huge part of doing good work. Again, I'm a person that believes that things occur from the inside out. And I remember feeling a lot of fear and trepidation about um, doing more consulting work. But I also remember feeling the grief and the sadness around not being able to do the work that I love as an occupation any longer. And I really grieved that. I really grieved not being able to um, support systems, support the college that I work for, and really, intentionally honoring diversity, cultivating equitable and inclusive structures. I really grieved not being able to do that. Know that, and then I also felt guilty about grieving it because the blessing is that I still have a job, and some people completely lost their job. So I had to navigate through the grief, but also the kind of shame, like how dare I still feel sad about that. And then I realized that as a person who feels very deeply, that I wasn't just feeling for myself. I was feeling for, all the people who were losing their job. If it had DEI in the title, they were gone. I was grieving for that we have this local organization that is an umbrella of Vatahi, and seeing literally the number of people on our calls dwindle. I think our last meeting we were like at 7 or 8, and there was a time we had like 20. And so I say that to say the moving forward in developing a business for me is part of what I'm doing to do good work, because it was a tough decision, and it was a decision that required that I really navigate through fear, the fear of what that really looks like, and the fear of whether I actually have something to contribute. And then I was reminded that I'm a whole entire author. So of course I have something to contribute. And so that is some of the good work that I'm doing right now. The other thing, and when we talk about from the inside out, is you mentioned, Jaquin, the word equitable, the word equity, right? I really had to have a conversation with my maker on this, because originally I was just going to say, to title my business Light Work, right? And I realized that I was doing so out of fear. Now, I don't know what other people are doing, and no judgment, right? This is just Dr. K. Part of doing good work is to navigate through fear and to be honest with myself. And to be honest with myself, I am still a person that is focusing on helping to cultivate equitable and inclusive communities, unapologetically. And so the way in which I am doing that in terms of doing good work is working more with nonprofits. I have some clients that are in the nonprofit sector, in the business sector, in the education sector, and really taking deep dives into what does bias look like, and how do we navigate through that? What does honoring diversity in the spaces that we work and the spaces that we learn, what does that look like? Because that's a skill. It's not just something that we just wake up in the morning and just do. um, Writing more is what I'm doing to do good work. I've in the last since the beginning of the year, I think I have maybe 5 or 6 published articles that I've put out there into the universe, and finishing my book. So those are things that, again, from the inside out, um, just offering, being a vessel that offers work, so that at the end of my life, I can hear the words, "Well done, my good and faithful servant." Um, yeah.
Love it. Um, you have a follow-up, or can I go?
I do have a follow up. Is you? I think you said, in order to do good work, you have to navigate your fears, which is so very true. Um, that I believe. I think I have something to say before I follow up and ask the question. Is I truly believe that we have to name it and address it, because if we don't, this is something that's going to hold us back. It's going to, for lack of better words, like paralyze us from moving forward and doing the work that is required to make the world a better place. So could you talk a bit more about, um, how did you work through that, the fear of the words that you were using? That's part of the work that you're doing.
So the question is, how did I work through the fear?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of prayer. I'm just going to be really honest. A whole lot of prayer. I have conversations with the divine, whatever you call your maker. A whole lot of good conversations on the front porch, with a cup of tea, with some scripture. Sometimes with a journal. Sometimes going to sit by the river. Sometimes, like, truly actively engaged in um, conversations and relationship with the divine, on, okay, this is what I'm thinking, this is what I'm feeling, help me through this, guide me through this, give me clear vision, give me clarity, and also give me courage, because you can get the clarity, like what you all are doing. It took courage to do this, right? I have massive respect for what you all are doing. It took courage. You had the vision, but you also had to have the courage. So for me, it was, anyone who knows me knows that one of my personal values is having a relationship with the divine, and that relationship filters into everything that I do, and really helps me to navigate through fear. The other thing is good therapy, right? Because good therapy can make sure that you are thinking squarely. Your thinking is aligned with with your hopes, dreams, and desires, and that you're not self-sabotaging yourself. So both very were strategies that I continue to use to navigate through doing and showing up to do good work.
I love it. I want to get into a little bit of your writing, and then we'll go into some of the details of the book, and we'll wrap up. So, in the and we share a lot in common. I didn't know this. Beyond just our professional passions, our enormous respect for community colleges as major drivers of higher ed access for all of the everyone, but certainly for all of the communities that we care about and who need that access. Um, your mother's first name, Creola, is my grandmother's first name, Creola. We also share, I know, right? We also share similar ideas around writing. So, in the dedication of your book, you write that writing is an art, and the page is my canvas. So, if you don't mind, talk to us a little bit about what writing is for you, that whole writing process, and how you make it such a creative and iterative experience.
Afterwards we'll have to have a conversation because now I'm like, are we related? I don't know too many Creolas in this world. Okay. And I know from meeting you in person that we got like the same height. I'm 4'9.5". We've embraced and like looked eye to eye. So we'll
Yo,
have to
what's up,
have to
fam?
do some exactly. What's up, fam? um so I've been a journaler for a very long time, since maybe my early 20s. So, maybe 21, 22, I started journaling. So we're looking at over 20 years of just loving to write. And actually, my book came out of that love for writing. Right, I would sit in data team meetings, and I always have a notebook. So even like with the whole invention of like, remarkables and the online tools, I always keep a notebook. Right, it's something about the paper and the pen. Like I said, it's, I don't know, for me it's like art. And so I would sit in these data team meetings. I used to serve as before moving to Virginia, I was a literacy and equity trainer for the state of Missouri. And one of my jobs, well, my main job was to go to districts that had, at the time, we called them achievement gaps, right? Achievement gaps is synonymous with equity gaps, right? We're just talking about language. And I would go to these districts and I would look at their data, do a deep dive in the data, like really get a sense of where the challenges lie, where the victories lie, and how we can close these achievement gaps, right? After every Student Succeed Act, we started talking about equity gaps, right? And so I would sit in these data team meetings and I would make notes about what was happening. And I would time and time again see very well intentioned people and brilliant people, right? Come to the table with strategies and ideas that often got knocked down by their own biases, right? One of them that comes to mind, and I discuss this one in my book, on the chapter herd mentality, is I was sitting in a meeting, and every time they started talking about a school district that happened to be a predominantly Black school district, they started singing the song "Welcome to the Jungle." I mean, "Welcome to the Jungle." And I was like, huh, this is odd. Right? And I noticed that they didn't have any other songs for any other districts that they discussed. We took a break. I went outside. I called a mentor. I said, hey, I'm having a moment and I need some guidance. I'm in this meeting. Every time they refer to this predominantly Black school district, they start singing the song "Welcome to the Jungle," and there's a couple of people who seemed visually uncomfortable, but they still joined in with the song. And I was like, I'm just uncomfortable, and I'm uncomfortable saying something too because I'm new here, and I don't want to. And what I said to him was, and I don't want to come across as the angry Black woman. And he said, Dr. K, there is nothing about you that can come off as angry, even though you're Black. That you don't, that's just not your energy. So go in there and ask the question. Ask them, what is it about this school district that makes them sing that song? And then are there jingles for other school districts? And I said, okay, I got it. So I went back in and I asked the question. And there were no other jingles for any other schools. And I remember writing that down as it's just in my journal, just in the back of my notebook. And so when it came time to, when the thought occurred to me to write a book, I said, okay, write a book about what? And and I started looking through my journals, and I was like, these 5 journals just right here, this is a book. And so I literally took scenarios, and of course changed them around and things of that nature, so that we're not identifying the school district, so that there's confidentiality. But literally this work came from my journals, the journals that I was and taking notes on when I was in meetings.
Love it. Love it. The other piece of this, and then Jaquin, you can jump in for the next question, is you often, you've already sort of done it even tonight, you have a sort of reservoir, a collection of tools available to you as a writer. As you said, your journals, these anecdotes and experiences. But I also noticed something that we do in our own writing is African proverbs. And 2 of them that stood out, one you use in a diverse issues piece and another in the book, which I like. So one is, if you think you're too small to make a difference, you haven't spent the night with a mosquito. Okay, we got to talk about that one. The second one is, when 2 elephants fight, it's the grass that suffers. Talk to us about the wisdom embedded in those 2 pieces of African proverbs, and the role that African proverbs play in your approach to writing and telling the stories of this book.
Oh, wow. Um, so I am and what is called an Orisha in a African-based spiritual tradition. And in that spiritual tradition, there are what we call Odus. So it's like Odus would be comparative to like Bible scriptures, right? And there are proverbs for each one, right? And so a lot of times the proverbs that I utilize are from like that sacred text. Additionally, born and raised in the church, right? And so a lot of, my mother's a Baptist minister. My stepfather is a deacon. My grandfather was a deacon. I come from a family of folks that we use parables and sayings. Heap, see, few know. If you have your hand in a lion's mouth, wiggle it gently till you get it out. Right. So I come from a family where we learn through proverbs, and we learn through verses. And when 2 elephants fight, it's the grass that suffers. That's one of my favorite proverbs. I think about that proverb when it comes to parenting, when it comes to any relationship. Right now, the grass that is suffering is our children and our students who we're supposed to be cultivating the foundation for, right? I'll say, I live in Virginia, and in Hampton Roads, based on the last census, we're already a majority minority in Hampton Roads, right? Just looking at the data. And so what that means, and Hampton Roads is the home of NATO, Virginia Beach, exactly. So we have every branch of the military here. So there's people here literally from all over the world, right? And so when those systems are fighting about whether to call this DEI, whether to call this whatever it is, or who needs support and who doesn't need support, it's the grass, it's the people that we're supposed to be supporting to ensure that there is that their livelihoods are such that we leave our communities more beautiful and beneficial than we inherited them. And that's right now the grass that I am concerned about, that is suffering because of the elephants. Whether the elephants can be political, the elephants can be whoever it is at in our workplace that there may be collisions and issues with, that sometimes are just, if we just extract some of that and just look at the grass and talk about how can we fertilize this grass, how can we make sure that we're leaving our communities more beautiful and beneficial than we inherited them, and understand that that's our common ground, and focus on that, we can continue to do good work.
I love that. I think it really leads into the next question that I have for you. And you write about the importance of healing in education,
Mm.
and you kind of touched on like there's a lot of friction and tension right now around just how can we create environments where both the student and the educator or the adult can thrive personally and professionally. So with that being said, like, how can we create conditions where everyone can thrive?
One of the biases that I discuss in my book is called scarcity bias. And the name Beyond Implicit and Explicit Bias is kind of a play on words, because I used to go to these workshops and professional development, and we would talk about conscious and unconscious bias, implicit and explicit bias. But then when I'm very inquisitive. Some might say I just ask a lot of questions. And I was really curious if there were specific types of implicit and explicit biases. And that led me into looking at research that has been done for hundreds of years on specific types of biases. Scarcity bias is one of those. And scarcity bias occurs when we are afraid of losing time, energy, money, anything that we find valuable, right? And so if we manage our own biases, specifically those around scarcity, um, I think that we will accomplish a lot more.
Yeah, I agree. And in the book, you have, I think it's like after every chapter, you
Mhm.
have these pause and ponder reflection questions. And I thought that was pretty cool to kind of
Thank
help,
you.
I think what I like to say is like continue the conversation, right? That you
Mhm.
just gave us a lot of really good information, but then it's like, okay, what questions do you ask yourself? Or maybe you read the book, you understand the information, how to put it to practice, but then you have to go back and
Mhm.
ask yourself some of these questions. So, we also do that in our work after, some blogs and book chapters where we ask a question people can sit
Mhm.
with.
Mhm.
What led you
Mhm.
to the questions you asked in your book?
So I'm a shout out at Harris Stowe State University, my HBCU. I graduated from there and served as Miss Harris Stowe back in 2002, 2003. And one of the things that it was like ingrained in us. You ever meet somebody from Howard University? And no matter what they gonna say, Howard University, like, I don't you can be talking about fishing, they're gonna figure out how to say Howard University in there. And so I used to say, I think like they're trained on how to make sure that in every conversation at some point Howard is mentioned, right? uh, and one of the things that at Harris Stowe, we had to do after every assignment is a reflection. And they really, really push being a reflective practitioner. And because from the very beginning of my education, because I received my bachelor's degree there, I was trained to reflect, to be a reflective practitioner. Even now, whenever I go out and do good work, whether it is when I'm writing or doing a guest speaking engagement or facilitating something, I always ask myself, was that meaningful? Okay, what did we do well? What do we want to do differently? Like, even if I'm in the car, I just still ask myself those questions. And so the pause and ponder came out of that, right? Being a reflective practitioner. The other thing is, I I do not see myself as a person who, like, yes, I see myself as a change agent to an extent, but I'm not here to manipulate or fix anything or fix anybody, right? I don't see myself as a person who's here to like fix people, right? That's not a me job. What I think that I do offer is opportunities in my book to pause and to think about our own thinking. That metacognition is really important, right? And so that's what led me to have those pause and ponder in there first. And there's several reflection questions in every chapter of the book, because I think it's good to ask yourself, man, do I show up this way? Wow. Is Dunning-Kruger effect a bias that I kind of lean in with and don't even realize it, right? And there's also checklists in my book too, so you can go through each of the biases and ask yourself, do some self-evaluation and to see if that's a bias that you're not even realizing that you're familiar with, and then instead of living in that space, then manage it through these reflection questions and then some of the tips that are provided in there as well.
Let's get into another matter here, particularly related to the book. And again, the book is titled um, About or Beyond Implicit and Explicit Bias, A Journey to Anti-Bias Work Through the Lens of Strategies and Stories. So studies have shown, and one of the things you do in the book pretty well, and your back cover endorsements talk about this, is that you review different types of bias. And you have a whole chapter on intergroup bias, decision fatigue bias, would love to know more about that one, scarcity bias, and the like. Studies have shown that bias, whether implicit or explicit, can influence decisions that teachers make in classrooms, that leaders make in boardrooms, that boards make behind closed doors, that committees make when hiring, right? We all influence decisions that can often in ways without people even realizing it. I often tell the story when talking about public speaking, that especially, you'll appreciate this as another fun-sized author, right? That some people can walk into a room, they're taller, they tend to be of a different race and ethnicity, they tend to be men with close-cut hair, wearing pretty gray ordinary suit. They can walk in the front of the room and immediately be perceived as competent, qualified, capable, and ready, even when they're not. But then there are others of us who show up at the front of the room, and that's if you can see us because we might be too short, or if you can see us because you have never seen scholarship and authorship wrapped up in all that we bring. And whether that's our hair or our expression or our race or our orientation, studies show that what you're doing is true. Bias is not just something to talk about, it's something to do something about, because it shapes our decisions. So in your book, you talk about moving beyond just naming bias to actually interrupting it. What does that look like in real world practice, especially for leaders and educators who want to do good work?
It looks like practice, right? Dr. Beverly Tatum said bias is like smog. It's everywhere. It's in the air, right? If you go into a grocery store and you're just, just going to get groceries, you look to the left or you look to the right and you take a look at the magazine rack, right? You will notice that typically there is one hue, one, race and ethnicity that you see on every magazine, right? Um, and so because bias is like small, gets everywhere, and we know research on on brain science regarding neuroplasticity and our unconscious thinking, then that means that we must be consciously aware of our biases. And research shows that even talking about our biases, being consciously aware of our biases, and utilizing strategies to manage them makes a huge difference. And so the way that we can interrupt with grace, again, with grace, with grace, with grace, with grace. And I say that because everybody everybody has a bias. It's like everybody has a favorite something. And it's nothing wrong with having a favorite. It becomes challenging and an issue when that favorite thing or that favorite whatever uh, then harm someone else, right? Rob someone else of an opportunity that should have been theirs because of your favorite whatever. And so the way that we interrupt it is through managing it. The way that we manage it is through strategies. You asked for a real world application, and I'll continue to use myself as an example because again, Ayan Levon's aunt said once, well, I may be in the front of the room, but I'm still in the room, right? And so I may be in the front of the conversations and in the front of the leading the charge, and one of the leaders in the charge of how to navigate and manage biases, particularly so that we can create positive places to work and learn. I'm still in the room. I still navigate through my biases. Just the other day, I was at an event and someone mentioned the word ghetto to describe a group of women who I know are very, like they're business women, they're business owners. And I was like, huh. And initially, I didn't say anything. And I had to ask, I had a conversation with myself. And I said, why didn't I say anything? I said, why didn't I say anything? Did I not want to offend her? Where did that come from? Because even saying the word, saying someone was being ghetto because they're not speaking in a way that we think they should, who gets to define what's professional and what's not? But again, I had to navigate through that, and that was like 2 or 3 days ago. And so it's a constant interruption, and the interruption is loving yourself enough and wanting to do good work enough to be the change that we wish to seek, and that starts inside out.
I mean, that's the way it's got to happen. So many times, I think people hear these phrases, especially in higher ed. We will, turn anything into a buzzword or a tagline, and sometimes that's good because it gives people a way to sort of recall and bring things back up, and it's instant recall. But sometimes it can be limiting because it can diminish the power and the importance of a concept or a point, right?
Mhm.
Like you write in your um, book about bias. And one of the things we know is that bias is more than a concept. And you rightly frame it as a mindset. And people will often talk about mindsets and they say things like, well, you should assume positive intent. But bias doesn't go away or disappear just because you got good intent. Bias, right? Bias disappears when we've got good practices and good policies and good structures and good systems and good people who have the courage to confront it and to challenge it. And so I really appreciate your thoughts that you share, because it gives people some checklists of things I can do to interrupt, disrupt bias, and also to challenge it. Jaquin?
Yeah, I really appreciate this conversation, Dr. K. And I thank you so much for taking the time to be with us. I'm going to ask one of the wild card questions, and then I'll have Dr. Terrell wrap us up and take us home. So, what's something you've read, heard, or watched recently that has had an impact on you personally, professionally, or otherwise?
Your podcast. The mental health podcast that you all recently did really was very insightful. I see a lot of us, and I say us because I never separate myself from humanity, right? Um, Irrespect, I don't separate myself from humanity. I see a lot of us navigating with mental health challenges. Some of that is because we're not resting enough. Some of that is because we're not, there's a lot of stressors, right? And just listening to some of the things that were said in the podcast, like giving yourself grace, like remembering that you're only one person, and that there are others that are navigating through mental health challenges as well, and how to be a village with and for each other, was just a reminder that irrespective of where we are, everyone needs a village and everyone needs a tribe, and that tribe and that village is essential. Belonging is essential to our mental health and wellness. It's not just a cute thing that we desire, it is a physiological and a psychological need. And I think that was conveyed very well in that last podcast that you did.
Certainly appreciate any shout out about how important mental health and belonging is. So, I mean, you have the final moments, Dr. Kizart, closing comments to those who are listening across LinkedIn, X, YouTube, all of our various platforms. It's been great to have this conversation with you, but you have closing comments, and then I'll close this out for the show.
Closing comments. Wherever a human being may be existing and coexisting, that means everywhere in the world, right? Um, there are challenges and there are benefits and there are inspirations all around us. In the process of doing good work, I think it's really, really, really essential that we do not throw the baby out with the bathwater. And what I mean by that is, I know that, a lot of institutions, and a lot of schools and a lot of nonprofits and a lot of businesses are restructuring, and we're looking at how they advocate and how they do the work of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Make sure in that work that we continue to have intentional conversations about biases. Biases, again, have been researched for years before DEI was a thing. So make sure that we're not throwing the baby out with the bathwater, that we're not throwing out a lot of the essential conversations like navigating and healing and managing our biases, and lumping them into the category of DEI and problematic terms and things of that nature. That we're remembering that these conversations about biases are essential in healthcare. They're essential in nonprofits. They're essential anywhere you may find a human being, right? We have to make sure that we are still having and engaging in these intentional conversations about navigating through our own personal bias and institutional and organizational biases. That's essential and intentional work. And
Awesome. Well, on behalf of the entire show and crew, we want to thank you for being our special guest on episode 38 of Do Good Work podcast. And to everyone who's tuned in, who's jumped into the chat, who's helped share, remember, doing good work is not easy. Doing good work means doing hard work. And if the goal is justice, if the goal is changing the lived experiences of people, if the goal is truly making a difference, then discomfort can't be a deterrent. It's part of the requirement. It's part of the journey. It's the price that we pay for pursuing truth and justice. We'll use it, brace yourself, equity, democracy, and all things good. So we've covered a lot of ground today, and we hope you're walking away with not just new insights, but actionable strategies that you can implement right away. And as we say so often, doing good work isn't about being perfect. It's not about perfection. It's about intentionality. It's about purpose. It's about growth. It's about creating space where everyone can feel seen, heard, valued, safe, secure, and thrive. So if you found value in today's conversation, please follow us on social media at Do Good Work. Get linked in with us, 46 more. And no matter what, this week, while you go out into the world, regardless of what's happening in your house, in my house, the White House, the State House, the courthouse, the classroom, don't be afraid to do something. But if you're going to do something good. And y'all already know what we call it. Do good work. Peace.
Thank you for tuning in to Do Good Work Podcast. We hope you found today's conversation informative, uplifting, and insightful. Don't forget to like and share this episode with your networks. Follow us on social media at Do Good Work on X, formerly Twitter, for real-time updates, behind-the-scenes content, and so much more. Until next time, friends, don't be afraid to do something, but do something good. Do good work.